It was 2:14 a.m. on a Thursday. It was the kind of night where the blue light of a 5,000-row Excel spreadsheet burns permanently into your retinas. My coffee had gone cold hours ago. The only thing keeping me awake was a glaring inconsistency in Phase 1 environmental assessment from a county that shall remain nameless. They called it Parcel 42. Yeah. On paper, it was a site selector's dream. 500 acres, shovel ready, dual feed power. The local economic development director, let's call him Bob, swore up and down the site was clean. He had a firm handshake, a custom embroidered polo shirt, and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Just a former dairy farm, he told me. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know why I just used that kind of accent, but there we are. Just a former dairy farm, he told me, handing me a glossy brochure over a plate of course, catered barbecue. But in the world of corporate real estate, perfect is just another word for motive. Because when I finally cross-referenced their drone footage with a 1982 topographic survey, Bob's pristine, shovel-ready megasite started looking a lot like a $400 million liability. Bob didn't just bend the truth, he buried it under 6 feet of unpermitted filled dirt. Welcome to Site Selectors Are People 2. I'm your host, as always, Devin Hillsdon-Smith. So usually I give a monologue in a bit of a professor style, or I bring a fellow industry veteran onto the show to swap war stories, but not today. Not today. Today, the interrogation room is empty, and I'm stepping down off the podium, the lectern, and I'm opening up my own classified case files. So, we are putting away the polished pitch decks and putting back the yellow caution tape on the dark, twisted underbelly of due diligence. I'm going to walk you through the anatomy of a dead deal, the red flags, the cover-ups, and the moment a billion-dollar negotiation fell apart. Grab your flashlights and double-check your NDAs. Things are about to get legally binding. Let's get to it. In our line of work, every case starts with a code name. This one, Project Apex. The victim, the client, was a Fortune 500 advanced manufacturer. I can't tell you what they make, but I can tell you that they needed to make a lot of it. They needed to make it like yesterday. The ransom demands were steep. They needed 1 million square feet under roof. They needed 50 megawatts of redundant power, 1 million gallons of water a day, heavy rail access. And most importantly, they needed a site that was completely, unequivocally, 100% shovel ready. The CEO was breathing down the neck of the VP of Real Estate, and the timeline was brutal. We sent out the RFPs. We cast a wide net across 3 states. And within 48 hours, the responses started rolling in. And that's when Bob entered the chat. You see, Bob was the economic development director for a mid-sized county in the Midwest. Let's call the town Oak Haven. Population 14,000. Now, to understand the crime, you have to understand the motive, right? Oak Haven had been bleeding manufacturing jobs since the local paper mill shuttered in 2018. The downtown was quiet. The tax base was shrinking. Project Apex wasn't just another factory to them. It was their golden ticket. 500 high-paying factory jobs. $500 million in capital investment. It was the kind of deal that gets a mayor reelected for a decade. It's the kind of deal that makes people desperate. So Bob submitted a binder for Parcel 42. I gotta give it to them. It was a masterpiece of economic development fiction. Glossy pages. Drone flyovers set to soaring royalty-free corporate rock music, and the promises, the promises, a 15-year 100% property tax abatement, fast-tracked permitting, a dedicated workforce training center built specifically for our client. But it was the infrastructure timeline that caught my eye. Bob promised a brand new high-capacity wastewater interceptor would be installed and operational by Q3 of this year. And anyone who has ever spent 5 minutes in a municipal zoning meeting knows that government physics simply do not move that fast. You don't lay 5 miles of heavy pipe through a county corridor in 6 months without cutting corners. Bob was offering us the moon, but as I sat there in the glow of my monitor at 2 a.m. looking at his timeline, I realized, something kind of chilling. Bob didn't even have a shovel. In the forensic accounting of site selection, we don't look for blood splatter. We don't dust for fingerprints. We look for zoning variances. We look for unfunded mandates. Paper trails don't lie, but economic development brochures, they lie all the time. It was time for the desktop interrogation. You see, before I ever set foot on Parcel 42, I needed to know exactly who I was dealing with. So I locked my office door, opened up 3 different monitors, and went to work on Bob's timeline. Bob promised a fully operational wastewater interceptor in 6 months, a 5-mile pipe capable of handling 1 million gallons a day. To lay 5 miles of heavy pipe, you need 3 things: engineering, easements, and money. I started with the money. I pulled Oak Haven's municipal budgets going back to 2021. I scrubbed the city council meeting minutes, reading through hours of public comments about pothole complaints and parade routes, hunting for the capital expenditure. Nothing. The money didn't exist. There was no bond measure, no state grant. Bob was trying to sell me a phantom pipe. But the money was only the first missing piece. Next, I pulled the county GIS maps to trace the proposed route of the imaginary pipeline. Bob said it was a straight shot down County Road 9. I overlaid the route with historical topographical data and property ownership records. That's when I found the roadblock. Right in the middle of Bob's straight line was a 40-acre farm owned by a man named Elias. A quick search of the county's civil court record showed that Elias had been actively suing the city of Oak Haven for the last decade over a property line dispute. Bob wasn't just broke, he was planning to run a critical piece of infrastructure through the front yard of the most litigious man in the county in 6 months. The labor analytics were just as dirty. The brochure boasted a pristine drive time radius showing 10,000 available manufacturing workers within 45 minutes of the site. But when I cross-referenced that radius with the Department of Transportation's bridge inspection records, the math crumbled. The main bridge connecting the population center to Parcel 42 was weight restricted and slated for a 2-year closure starting, the spring. Our workers wouldn't have a 45-minute commute. They'd have an hour-and-a-half detour. Spreadsheets can tell you that a municipality is lying. They can also show you the missing money and the broken bridges. But a spreadsheet can't look you in the eye while it lies to you. I had enough circumstantial evidence to kill the deal right there. I could have called the C-suite, told them Oak Haven was a mirage, and moved on to the next site, but I didn't because I needed to see it for myself. I needed to see Bob. I booked a middle-class seat on a regional jet, packed my worst pair of boots, and headed for the Midwest. Well, the upper Midwest, I suppose. We were going to Oak Haven. I now realize, by the way, before we get into the rest of this, that I used a real deep Southern kind of like accent earlier, and we're actually up in the upper Midwest for accuracy purposes regarding the story. So I don't have accents available to my brain right now, so we're just going to stick with normal and try to offend less people. All right, here we go. Well, it was 9 a.m. when I pulled my rental car into the staging area of Parcel 42. The sky was the color of a wet nickel. Yeah. And of course, Bob was already there, leaning against a brand new Ford F-150. And he had the whole welcoming committee with him. The mayor, the utility rep, and a platter of highly suspicious shrink-wrapped turkey sandwiches from the local deli at 9 a.m. Right. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is what they call the dog and pony show. It's designed to overwhelm your senses. Give the site selector a branded Yeti tumbler, shake their hand vigorously, and point their attention toward the horizon so they don't really look down at the dirt. Bob walked up to me, same custom embroidered polo, same smile. "Welcome to Oak Haven," he said. "Let me show you your client's new home." Well, we started walking the perimeter. Bob, well, he was a maestro, conducting an orchestra of invisible concrete. He pointed to a patch of overgrown thistles and called it the future employee parking lot. He pointed to a dilapidated wooden fence and called it the secure logistics corridor. He was painting a masterpiece, but I unfortunately wasn't there for the act. I was there for the canvas. But I let Bob talk. I let him monologue, be the professor about the tax abatements and the expedited permitting. And while he was looking at the sky, I was looking at the ground. I drifted away from the group, just a few yards at first. Bob noticed, his voice getting a little louder, trying to pull me back to the paved access road. "Hey, careful over there," Bob yelled out. Ground gets a little uneven near the tree line. Uneven. Right. My steel-toe boot caught on something hard. It wasn't a rock, it was iron? I crouched down and brushed away the dead grass. Sticking out of the earth, half buried and rusted orange, was a 2-inch steel vent pipe? The kind with the, specific curved cap on top. You don't need a phase 1 environmental assessment to know what that is. You just need a nose. So I leaned in, and the faint, sweet, unmistakable scent of decades-old diesel fuel wafted up from the soil. This wasn't just a former dairy farm like Bob claimed in the brochure. Decades ago, this was an unregulated mid-century fueling depot for heavy agricultural machinery. And right below my feet, holding who knows how many thousand of gallons of toxic sludge, was a rusted, unlined, undocumented underground storage tank. If my client had bought this land and put an excavator into the ground, that diesel would have leaked straight into the local water table. We wouldn't just be looking at construction delays. We'd be looking at a multi-million-dollar EPA remediation nightmare that we caused for this community. I stood up. I wiped the dirt off my hands. Now, Bob was standing 10 feet away, staring at me. The mayor had stopped chewing his turkey sandwich. The utility rep suddenly looked very interested in his own shoes. They knew. They all knew. They were hoping the desperation of our timeline would blind us to the poison in their soil. I looked at Bob. His smile was gone. "Bob," I said, "we need to talk, man." We didn't finish those turkey sandwiches. We moved the meeting from the dirt field to a windowless conference room in the basement of the county annex building. The air smelled like stale coffee and municipal desperation. You know the smell. This was the interrogation room. I didn't yell. In this business, whoever raises their voice first loses. I just sat at the end of the laminate table, pulled a pen from my jacket, and looked at Bob. "Bob," I said, "let's talk about the unlined 10,000-gallon diesel bomb you forgot to put in the glossy brochure." Oh, Bob tried to play the hits. He gave me the wide eyes, the nervous chuckle. "Oh, that old thing," Bob stammered, loosening his tie. "Elias, who owned the farm before, he told us that was drained back in the 80s. It's just a piece of scrap metal. We'll have Public Works pull it out next week. No harm, no foul." No harm, no foul. That's when I opened my laptop. It was time to show him the full case file. "Bob," I said, "even if I believed that tank was empty, which I don't, you still have a problem. Actually, you have 3. I turned the screen around. "I pulled your municipal budget, Bob. You don't have the capital to build a wastewater interceptor. I pulled the court records. Elias, the farmer, is going to block your easement until the end of time. And I pulled the DOT inspection records. The bridge your entire the bridge your entire labor force needs to cross to get here is slated for closure in March. I closed the laptop with a loud snap. You don't have a shovel-ready megasite, Bob. You have a brownfield with a traffic problem. The color completely drained from the mayor's face, who I had quite frankly forgotten was there. The utility rep put his head in his hands. Not the best poker player. Bob just stared at the table. The facade was gone. The $500 million golden ticket was officially dead on arrival. The autopsy of Project Apex was brief. I made the call to the C-suite from the rental car in the parking lot. We officially withdrew Oakhaven from consideration. Where did the client go? A month later, we closed a deal 3 states over. It was a boring, flat, utterly unremarkable patch of dirt in a Midwestern state. The EDO director there didn't wear a custom polo, and they didn't give us catered barbecue. But you know what? Their environmental reports were spotless. Their bridges held weight, and their wastewater pipes actually existed. In corporate real estate, let me tell you what, boring is beautiful. Boring saves you $500 million. Well, the file on Parcel 42 is closed. The NDAs are signed and the ink is dry. But somewhere out there, right now, an economic development team is putting together a glossy brochure. They are flying a drone over a field, adjusting the lighting, and cropping out a rusted vent pipe hiding in the tall grass. Trust the data. Verify the infrastructure. Always look down at the dirt. If you survived this due diligence period, do me a favor. Leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your interrogations. It'll help other sleuths find the show. My name is Devin Hillsdon-Smith. I'm your host, and this has been a classified case file from Site Selectors Are People Too. See ya. Just a heads up, views expressed in this podcast are solely my own and are not attributable to any employers, whether past or present. Thank you.